Hi, this is Angela Cox, and here I am. I'm going to show you how we're going to sew our bunny together. So before we get started, I'm going to need my bunny that I've cut out and I've already sewed on the eyes. I'm going to need my other piece of my bunny, right, that I just cut out. I'm going to need some scissors. I'm going to need some pins, and I'm going to need a threaded needle. I'm also going to need some thread. I'm going to need some more of this thread because I guarantee you I am going to run out. Now, step number 1, I need to lay out my bunny properly. So when I start, I want the bunny so that his eyes are looking at me, right? Second, I want to look at my other piece of fabric, and I want to make sure that the side of the fabric that looks like this is right on top of the side that looks like this, right? I want the right sides, the fuzzy sides, the right sides should be together, right? And it's going to look, I'm going to be looking at the inside of the fabric. When you sew with the overcast stitch, you always sew inside out, right? So the right side should be together. And then my next step is I need to pin this so that it does not move, right? So I always like to start on these corners, right? Because the easiest place for holes to form is on the corners. So remember, when I pin, I poke all the way through both layers of the fabric and then down. And always the pin should go in the middle, away from hopefully where you're going to be sewing. Then I'm going to pin this side, and then pin it towards you here. And then I'm going to go over here and pin right here because I don't want this to move. Right? Pin this way. It's going to pin this way right here. And then here, I want to make sure I pin these ears, and I'm not using a lot of pins, right? So you're probably going to use all the pins that Miss Cox gave you. And if you're at home and you need more pins, you're like, Miss Cox, I don't have enough pins. All you got to do is email me. I'll get you more pins, right? But because I do not want it to move, right? I should have given you enough pins, but just in case, or if you lost any, I will always give you more. Now, down here at the bottom, this is really an important part. Because when we are sewing an overcast stitch, right, we're going to go all the way around. But we always need to leave a hole, right? And that hole, it's really important that we leave a hole on the straightest spot. Because when we do a ladder stitch looks 1,000 times easier and 1,000 times better if it's on a straight part. Right? I do not want to leave the hole on the cheek. See how curvy that is? I don't want to leave the hole on the end of the hand. It's going to look weird. Right? So I am going to leave the hole right down here. And when I leave that hole, that means I'm going to start sewing right here. So I'm going to start sewing here and I'm going to stop sewing here. Right? And I want to make sure that I don't forget. So what I'm going to do is just take this little piece of paper, and I am going to take it, and I'm going to write, well, not with this one, I'm going to write stop. And I'm going to pin it right here on my bunny, so I remember to stop sewing here. Right? Pin it right through. Okay? And I'm going to start right here. I'm going to leave about a finger's width of hole because I want to be able to stuff it, but I do not want to have to use a long ladder stitch because ladder stitches are, they're kind of weak, right? The overcast stitch, which is what we're going to be doing right now, is much, much stronger than a ladder stitch. So I'm going to start right here. And I'm going to go through both, make sure I poke my needle through both layers of the fabric, and I'm just going to pull it straight until it hits, oops, now my knot went through my fabric, so that means I need a bigger knot. So I'm just going to take that knot, try to make it bigger, put like a few on top of one another, right? So let me try it again. Poke. Oh, still did it. So if my knot goes through the fabric, that means that the knot is not big and ugly enough, right? I want it to be a big, ugly knot that will not go through the fabric. Let me try it now. There we go. And I just take my thread and I loop it around like that, and right next to this knot, I'm going to put it in here. Remember, this is the overcast stitch. So I'm going to do it again, and it's going to loop around the edge of the fabric. Do it again, each time going forward just a little bit, right? Like 1/4 of an inch, not too far. And I keep sewing all the way around. Now, the closer together you make these overcast stitches, and the tighter you pull them, the better they are going to hold, right? If I'm leaving this far, if I'm doing here and then here, if I'm leaving a long way between each of these overcast stitches, that's not going to hold it together, and when you go to stuff it, your stuffing's going to be falling out all over the place, right? And all I do is I need to sew all the way around the edge of my bunny with an overcast stitch. Now, what's going to happen eventually is I'm going to run out of thread. This is not enough thread to go all the way around my bunny. I'm like here, right? You can see my bunny, I'm like here. I have to sew with an overcast stitch all the way around the perimeter of the bunny, right? Until I get to here where it says stop, okay? I am not going to have enough thread. And if I tried to get enough thread for all that, it would get tangled, right? So once I get to where once it gets about the length of my hand, so I can maybe get another couple stitches through here, I need to tie this off and get more thread. So about to that spot, I go right here, and remember to tie off the overcast stitch. I'm going to take it, I'm going to get this loop, and I'm going to go through the loop. One time, pull it tight. Right on top of that, another time, go through this loop, pull it tight, and one more time here. Right here, pull it tight. And then, right here where my stitches are, I'm going to cut this off. And then I get more thread, right? So I'm going to go through here, get my thread. Where did my thread go? I'm going to get more thread. Maybe. My thread seems to have disappeared. Or maybe I'll use some white thread, and then I'll show you. Because you can see I always try to use thread that matches the fabric. And maybe if I use white, you'll see why. Because overcast stitches are pretty invisible from the flip side, but not perfectly, right? So you'll be able to see right here, even whenever I've sewed, like I've overcasted all the way to here, you can't even really see those stitches, right? Now if I use a different color that stands out, you'll be able to see. If you're like, oh, why did Miss Cox give me this color? I can't even see my stitches. That's why, because you want them to blend in, right? And remember, I need a big, ugly knot, because remember my other knot, came through? I don't want that to happen. So right here where I ended this stitch, I ended it here, so just a teeny bit before, right? I'm going to pull it through, and then I'm just going to start sewing again, right? And I'm going to keep going. And that's all that I do. I need to sew this all the way around. Make sure you get through both layers of the fabric, right? And do you see here? You can see my white stitches. You can't even see my blue ones, but you can see these white ones, right? So it's really important. Sorry, I don't know what just happened. The computer went into sleep mode. So you want to use fabric or thread that matches your fabric if at all possible, because you don't want to see these stitches, right? And then this is all you do. You keep sewing all the way around, and you want to make sure that you get it through both layers of the fabric, just like this, right? When you get to the end, when you're like, oh no, I am out of thread, then all you do is tie it off and make sure you leave yourself enough thread, right? Make sure you leave yourself enough thread, because that's frustrating because if you don't tie it off, what's going to happen is it's going to pull out. And if you've gone through the trouble of sewing it together, you want it to stay sewed together, right? So, one more time, you can see I've sewed to here, right? I have to continue sewing all the way around the perimeter of my bunny until I get to right here where I said stop. Be very careful, because the corners are the places that most likely are going to have holes, right? So make sure that you pay special attention to the corners. If you get to one of these corners, right? So let me keep sewing for a minute. I'm going to keep sewing away. And when I get to this corner, because I'm almost there, whoops, you see what just happened there? Just pull it tight. And you can move those stitches if you need to. When I get to this corner, right here, do you see how I'm almost to this pin? When you get to a pin, if it is not helping you, take it out, right? So do you see I've gotten to this pin? This pin is going to tell me, hey, Miss Cox, be careful, because this is a place that it's easy to get a hole. So I'm going to take this pin out, and this spot right here where I had that pin, I want to make sure that I sew it really, really, really good, because out of all the places that I'm most likely to have a hole, the corner is one of them, right? So make sure right here in this corner that I sew it really well. You might even want to make 2 or 3 stitches over top of it, right? And then that's all I do. I just keep sewing, just like Dory, keep on swimming. I'm going to keep on sewing until I get all the way around the perimeter, all the way around the edge. And whenever I start to get to a point where I'm running out of thread, when I have about a hand's length left, then I'm going to tie it off and start again. Remember, when you tie it off, you're going to go through this loop and make 3 stitches through the loop right on top of one another. And that's it.